Hello, my name is Verity, and I woke up in a hospital bed with burns on my arms and my stepfather crying at my side, saying my mother was gone. But the real burn came seconds later when a detective leaned in and whispered, "Are you ready to know the truth about him?" What truth? That my mother had planned to leave him? That she'd signed divorce papers? That he changed her life insurance? Right before the fire? They all said she died in the blaze. But what if she didn't? What if she died, waiting for someone to open the door? And what if the people I called family weren't mourning her, but protecting him? Would you want to know more? Would you be able to look away? When I opened my eyes, the light above me hummed like it belonged to a world I hadn't returned to yet. White ceiling, sterile air, a dull ache spread across my ribs and back. Something beeped near my head, slow, steady, mechanical. I turned slightly. Tubes were in my arms, my lips dry under the weight of an oxygen mask. It wasn't a dream. I was alive. But the house, our house, it wasn't. My brain fought to arrange the pieces. Smoke, screaming, heat pressing down like it had claws. Then, nothing. A void. And now, this bed. I tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. My body ached like it had been dragged through a storm and stitched back together with cheap thread. The door creaked open. Silas. He stepped in slowly, as if walking into a church, shoulders sagged, hands twisting a worn baseball cap. "I didn't know if you'd wake up," he said. His voice trembled. "Verity, I'm so sorry." He came closer, pulling a chair to my bedside. I watched him through the fog of medication and memory, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. He took my hand with both of his, held it like it might vanish. "Laurel," his voice cracked, "your mom didn't make it." A cold wave surged through me. My lips parted, but nothing came. Not a scream, not a sob. He started to cry, at first quiet, then shaking, body bent as if he were breaking in half. Tears fell onto my bedsheet. It wasn't performative, not overtly. It was messier than that. Real or rehearsed, I couldn't tell. My body wanted to believe him. My heart wanted something else. "I was there," he said through tears. "I tried, Verity. God knows I tried." I turned away, staring at the window, though I couldn't see past the blurry pane. What was he doing before the fire? Where was he? And why did this feel so off? Later, the nurse, Rosa, her badge said, adjusted my IV and said I could have a visitor. I nodded. A different man entered, not a friend, not a relative. He wore a brown leather jacket and carried the quiet weight of someone who'd seen too much. His eyes moved carefully across the room before settling on mine. "Miss Dane," he said, voice low. "Detective Royce Halden." "I'm handling the case on the house fire." I blinked. My heart picked up speed again, not because of him, because of the word case. He stepped closer, stopping beside the foot of the bed. "I won't keep you long. I just needed to say something before the others do." I nodded slowly. "Okay." He glanced toward the hallway, then leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you ready to know the truth about him?" A chill ran through me, deeper than anything the hospital air had managed. My breath caught. "Him?" His eyes didn't waver. "Silas." My lips parted again, but no sound came out. Just breath. Just questions. They tumbled inside me like a dam breaking. Was he implying Silas caused the fire? Lied about something? What hadn't I seen? I didn't answer. He stood straight, gave a polite nod, and stepped back. "We'll talk when you're stronger, but I needed to look you in the eye first." After he left, I lay there, still. Long enough for the machine to beep slower, like even my heart needed to pause. Memories teased me, fragments trying to align. My mother's voice yelling from another room, the crackle of wood, a photo frame melting on the nursery wall. Me, reaching for the doorknob and pulling back, burned. Smoke that tasted like metal, and Silas. Not in front of me, not behind me, not anywhere. Where was he? They'd said it was an electrical fault, that fires could move fast in old houses, but I remembered heat swelling through the walls, and my mother screaming my name. Why couldn't I remember more? The door creaked again. Silas, back again. You need to rest, he said softly, placing a folded blanket at the end of the bed. I'll let the nurse know if you need anything. I nodded, pretending to relax. Don't worry about anything right now, honey, he added. Everything's being handled. That last part stuck to my skin like a rash. Handled. He left, and the door clicked shut behind him. I didn't trust myself to sit up fully yet, but my hands were steady now. I reached for the small call button, but hesitated. What would I even say? Instead, I watched the window as dusk settled outside. Laurel was gone. Silas was grieving, so they said. Detective Halden wanted me to know the truth, but I had a feeling I'd have to dig it out myself, and I would, not because I wanted revenge, but because something was wrong, and I wasn't the kind of woman who sat quietly while someone rewrote my life for me. I turned my face toward the window again. The city lights blurred like distant promises. Yes, I whispered to the glass, to the dark, to no one. I want to know everything. The hallway outside my hospital room buzzed with movement. Nurses exchanging notes, carts squeaking on polished floors, the hum of fluorescent lights casting shadows longer than they should have been. But inside my room, everything stood still. I hadn't moved since whispering those words to the glass the night before. I want to know everything. The weight of them settled in my chest like stone. Detective Halden returned the next morning, just after breakfast was cleared from my tray. I hadn't eaten much. Couldn't. My stomach had been caught in a knot ever since Silas's tear-soaked visit. Halden knocked once, then stepped inside without waiting. He didn't smile, didn't soften his tone. I have something to show you, he said, pulling a plastic evidence sleeve from the folder he carried. He placed it gently on my lap. Inside was a photo. It was my mother's watch. I recognized it instantly. Narrow gold band, a chipped face she refused to replace. It still works, she'd always say, but this one had stopped. The hands were frozen at 3:17 a.m. The report says your mother died at approximately 2:40, Halden said, but this was recovered from her wrist by the coroner. Intact, the glass didn't even crack. I blinked at the image. My throat tightened. Accidents don't stop time after someone's declared dead, he continued, which means either the timeline is wrong or someone wanted it to look a certain way. The way he said someone sent a cold ripple through my body. I'll leave this with you, he added, sliding the folder onto the bedside table. We're not officially saying anything yet, but you need to see where things don't line up. He turned to leave, then paused. He's coming by again today, isn't he? Silas? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Halden nodded once. Just keep your eyes open. He was right. And I hated how much sense it made. By the time Silas returned that afternoon, I had stared at that photo so long I could have drawn the watch from memory. He walked in holding a folded quilt in one arm and a cup of herbal tea in the other. Thought you might want something more comforting than hospital sheets, he said, unfolding the quilt and laying it at the end of the bed. This was Laurel's favorite. She always said it smelled like home. He sat down in the same chair as before, rubbing his hands together like he was cold. The room was warm. I keep thinking about that night, he said, voice soft, controlled. If I'd just come back downstairs sooner, maybe I could have. He trailed off. I didn't interrupt. I let the silence stretch. People fill silence when they're nervous. Silas didn't. He just watched me like he was waiting for something. Finally, I asked, "Were you with her when she passed?" He shifted, barely. "No," he said slowly. I was talking to the EMTs, trying to make sure they knew where everyone was. It all happened so fast. Too fast. Too convenient. Too carefully worded. I gave a slow nod, then looked toward the clock on the wall. The second hand ticked steadily forward, unlike the one in the photo. He changed the subject quickly, asked how the nurses were treating me, if I needed him to bring anything from home. I smiled just enough to keep him from asking questions. He left 20 minutes later, promising to return tomorrow. As soon as the door clicked shut, I exhaled, deep, controlled. Then Rosa came in. The nurse was younger than most of the others, probably just out of training, but her voice was calm, certain. "Can I ask you something?" she said, glancing over her shoulder before stepping closer. "A couple days ago, did you have family try to visit?" I blinked. "Besides Silas?" She hesitated, then nodded. "There was a woman, older. Looked like she could have been your aunt or something, said she was your grandmother." My heart thudded. "Maribel. She was here for hours," Rosa said, "but someone revoked her visitor clearance. Said it wasn't good for your recovery." "Who?" "I don't want to get in trouble," she murmured. "But he said you needed peace, that anything upsetting would delay your healing." I didn't have to ask who he was. Silas had kept her away. From me. From whatever Laurel might have left behind. My body went still. Everything sharpened. I wasn't just recovering from a fire anymore. I was waking up from something far more dangerous. Years of manipulation I never saw coming. I thanked Rosa. She gave a small, sympathetic nod, then quietly left. Alone again, I picked up the folder Halden left. My mother's watch stared back at me, its hands still trapped at 3:17. What else had been done for my healing? What else had been kept from me? I tried to recall the last months before the fire, the tension between Laurel and Silas, the way she'd brush off my questions. "Don't worry, honey. It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Silas had always known how to play the room. Make himself useful, essential, kind. People trust a man who cooks dinner and mows the lawn, who attends church and remembers birthdays. But Silas also never let my mother speak for herself. At family dinners, he answered questions directed at her. He'd clarify her opinions, twist her words into the ones he preferred, and when she'd correct him, he'd laugh it off like she was overreacting. He'd done it for years. I just hadn't realized. Until now, I sat up straighter, wincing at the pull in my side, but I didn't care. I reached for the hospital notepad beside my bed and began to write. Dates, names, phrases he'd used, moments that hadn't added up before but made awful sense now. I wasn't ready to accuse anyone yet, but I could track the gaps. I could build a map. They had erased one visitor. Who else had they erased? I tapped the photo of the watch. "You died at 3:17, didn't you, Mom?" I whispered. So why did he lie about it? I stared at the photo of Mom's watch on my bedside table long after the sun dipped beneath the horizon. It haunted me. Not just the fact that the hands were frozen at 3:17 a.m., but the way no one seemed to question the discrepancy. Not Silas, not the doctor. No one but me and Halden. It was like everyone had quietly agreed not to touch the cracks in the story. The nurse came in one last time to check my vitals, then dimmed the lights. I lay back, my body sore, but my thoughts sharper than they'd been since I woke up. I didn't know where this was going, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was investigating. I must have dozed off for a little while, because when my phone buzzed on the tray table, it startled me. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen since the funeral arrangements were finalized. Ophalie. I hesitated, heart fluttering in a strange rhythm, before answering. Her voice came through soft, syrupy, like nothing in our family had burned to ash. "Hey, Verity," she said, sweet but calculated. "I heard from Silas that you're awake. I wanted to give you some space, let you rest." "Thanks," I replied cautiously. "That's considerate." She didn't respond right away. Then, "I just wanted to check in. I know things are complicated, but please, don't let people stir up trouble. You need rest, not rumors." There it was. Her tone didn't slip, but her message was clear. "Rumors?" I asked. Ophalie sighed, lightly, as if I were exhausting her with my confusion. "Silas has been through so much. We all have. You weren't there, and it's easy to let your mind spiral when grief sets in. You weren't there. That one hit deep, but I didn't let it show." "I'm not spiraling," I said evenly. "I'm just trying to understand some things." "Well," she said in that same syrupy way, "some things don't need to be understood. They just need to be put to rest. That's how we heal, Verity. The audacity nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. She kept talking. He was the only one with her. At the end, don't take that away from him. It's all he has now. I stared at the ceiling, mouth slightly open, my jaw tensed. Do you believe everything he says? I asked, keeping my voice calm, almost casual. I believe he loved her, Ophelie replied. More than most people ever get to be loved. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I realized something. She didn't just believe him. She needed to. If he was lying, it would mean she'd built her loyalty on sand. We hung up not long after, and I lay there in silence, the words, "You weren't there," echoing in my ears. They had the same weight as, "You don't know what really happened." Convenient phrases to push someone out of the room. Later that night, after the lights dimmed again and the halls grew quieter, I found myself staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them like I used to count stars when I was little and couldn't sleep. Back then, Mom would hum lullabies from the hallway, thinking I didn't hear her. I always did. That night, I remembered our last fight. It was 2 months before the fire. We sat across from each other in her kitchen, cups of chamomile tea between us, untouched. You can't keep living like this, I'd told her. She looked tired, not angry, just drained. It's not that simple, she said. Yes, it is, I snapped. You leave. You start over. You don't let someone shrink you until you're unrecognizable. She looked down at her mug. You don't understand. It's not just me anymore. You mean Silas? I asked. Or the image you've built around him? That stung her. I saw it in the way she flinched, even though she tried to hide it. I love him, she whispered. In my way. Then love yourself more, I said before standing up and grabbing my coat. I didn't look back. Not that time. I'd sent her a birthday card 3 weeks later. She never responded. The silence after that fight had never sat right with me. I told myself she was busy, that life got in the way. But deep down, I knew better. I wasn't there when she needed me. But maybe, just maybe, I was the only one who ever tried to tell her the truth. Back in my hospital bed, I clenched the blanket tighter. I wondered if Ophelie had ever had a conversation like that with Mom, or if she'd just smiled and nodded, pretending everything was fine. Some families run on denial, like it's gasoline. In the morning, I was discharged. Silas offered to pick me up, but I declined. A nurse helped me into a cab, and by noon, I was sitting in my apartment again for the first time in over a week. The place was just as I'd left it, quiet, organized, untouched. But I was different. I moved slowly, stiff from the fire in the hospital, but I made it to my desk. I opened my notebook and wrote 2 headings across the top of the first page: his story and what I know. Under his story, I started listing everything Silas had said. She was already gone when he found her. The fire started in the kitchen. There was nothing more he could do. Then I made a list of what I know. Her watch stopped at 3:17. Rosa said someone blocked Maribel from visiting. Halden doesn't trust him either. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to make a scene. Not yet. But I wasn't going to sit in the dark either. They wanted me to be quiet. That wasn't going to happen. Later that evening, I tried to video call Ophelie again. She answered on the second ring, her face perfectly made up, background blurred. Hey, she said, with a smile too bright. I studied her features, the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine on the screen. We talked for a few minutes, surface-level stuff. She asked about the hospital food. I asked how work was, but I could feel the tension in every syllable. Did you know Mom was thinking of leaving him? I asked, casually. The screen froze for half a second, then caught up. Ophelie blinked. No, she said, voice tighter than before. She never said anything like that to me. But something shifted. Her smile flickered. Her eyes darted to the side, like someone had just walked past her off camera. I caught it. I paused the call on my end, staring at her frozen face. Even her face was lying. But not for long. The call had ended, but my thoughts hadn't. I sat there in silence, the apartment too still, too clean, like it was holding its breath. Ophelie's frozen expression lingered on my phone screen. Her eyes hadn't met mine once during the conversation. People don't look away when they're telling the truth. I closed the laptop, stood, and stretched. My body still ached in odd places, a reminder that no matter how sharp my mind was becoming, my physical self was still healing. I moved slowly to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and stared out the window as the day transitioned into evening. The world outside looked normal. I was the one out of sync. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud. 2 soft raps, deliberate and short. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find no one. I blinked, stepped out to check the hallway, and found only an envelope lying on the welcome mat. No postage, no writing, just plain brown with a slight bulge. I picked it up, padded, heavier than a regular letter. Back inside, I laid it flat on my desk, took a deep breath, and peeled it open. Inside was a photo and a small USB drive. The photo came first. A grainy still from a security camera. The timestamp in the lower corner read 1:45 a.m. The image showed a man I knew too well, Silas, walking across the downstairs hallway of our home. He had something crumpled in his hand, paper, maybe a letter. His posture wasn't panicked. If anything, it was too calm. He paused by the stairwell, looked over his shoulder, and then tossed the paper down into the shadows below. My hands began to tremble. I set the photo down and reached for the USB, plugging it into my laptop. The video file loaded quickly. No password, no label, just one clip. I watched in absolute silence. Silas moved slowly through the frame, glanced toward the stairwell, then hesitated. It was that pause, brief, calculated, almost theatrical, that chilled me. He looked right at the camera, then turned, dropped the paper, and walked away. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the screen went black. That footage hadn't been in the police file. My pulse kicked hard in my throat. I reached for my phone and called Halden. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Verity?" he said, voice rough like he'd just come off another call. "I got something," I said. "You need to see it." "Tell me." I explained quickly, concisely. The envelope. The photo. The USB. His silence on the other end wasn't surprised. It was heavy. "That's the raw file," he said. "We were told that camera was disabled. Supposedly it shorted during the fire." I sat up straighter. "They lied to you." "Yeah," he said flatly. "They did. Don't confront him yet. Not until I can validate the footage and match the timestamp." "I'm not confronting," I replied. "I'm compiling." We ended the call, and I sat there, staring at the paused video frame. Silas's face wasn't clear in the image, but his posture was. His entire demeanor radiated someone cleaning up, not someone grieving. The envelope hadn't come with a note, which meant someone out there wanted me to see this, but not to know who they were. A neighbor? A friend of Mom's? Maybe even someone inside the system who'd had enough. I replayed the clip again and again, watching for anything new. Then I noticed something strange about the paper he dropped. A glint of gold on one edge. Just a sliver, but enough. I shut the laptop and went to my closet. In one of the boxes tucked high on the shelf, I found what I was looking for. An old stationery set Mom used for special letters. Cream paper, thick and soft to the touch, with a gold trim that shimmered when it caught the light just right. It matched. She wrote something that night. And he destroyed it. Except he didn't destroy it completely. That clip, that photo, that was the paper mid-flight. It had to be recovered. It had to exist somewhere, even charred, even torn. I sat back down, heart beating faster than it had in days. Not from fear, from drive. They had erased her voice, and now they were trying to erase mine. I clicked open my folder, titled plainly, Truth, and began dragging files into it. The watch photo. Rosa's statement about Maribel being blocked from visiting. The voice notes I'd taken, summarizing Silas's version of events versus what I could confirm. I began compiling everything. No detail was too small. The way Silas had spoken at the funeral. How quickly he arranged the cremation. The fact that no one had seen the contents of the bedroom after the fire. Every lie was a thread. I was pulling them, one by one, and the fabric was starting to rip. I saved copies to a cloud drive. Another copy to an external hard drive I'd hidden in my closet months ago, back when I thought being careful was just paranoia. Turns out, it was preparation. Grief used to paralyze me. Now it fueled me. I opened a new document and started typing notes about Silas's behavior the week before the fire. His moods, his meetings, his excuses. Mom had seemed withdrawn, yes, but also like she was preparing for something. Maybe she had been. The way she spoke on the phone days before, calm, but measured. "I'll be okay, Verity," she'd said. "Just, if something happens, you know where the old files are." At the time, I thought she meant old tax returns. Now I wondered if she'd been telling me something else entirely. I closed my eyes, sat back, and let the pieces sit in my mind. Silas was careful, always was, but even careful men leave footprints, especially when they start to panic. When I finally shut the laptop, the apartment was bathed in moonlight. I hadn't noticed the transition from dusk to night. Time had folded around me. I looked once more at the still image from the video. Silas, mid-step, mid-lie. "I don't need to catch him red-handed," I whispered. "He's already bleeding truth." The room was quiet again, but the silence no longer felt empty. It was full, crackling with intent, loaded with everything I had uncovered so far. My laptop was still open on the table, the folder marked Truth growing heavier with each passing day. Every file, every note, every photo, pieces of a story someone had worked hard to bury. I had just begun to stand and stretch, intending to make tea, when another knock sounded at the door. A single, steady rhythm. Not Silas. His knock was always softer, more hesitant now. This one was deliberate. I opened the door to find Maribel. My grandmother looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were steady, her mouth tight. She didn't say hello. She simply held out a folder wrapped in aging twine, the edges frayed like something passed between generations. Without waiting for an invitation, she stepped inside. "Your mother gave me this," she said, voice raspy but firm. "Told me to keep it safe. Said if anything happened to her, you should be the one to read it." My throat tightened as I took it. The weight of it wasn't just physical, it was something else, something final. I nodded and gestured toward the kitchen. We moved slowly, as if any sudden movement might rip a hole in the moment. I set the folder down on the counter, untied the string, and opened it. Inside were a few documents, some handwritten pages, and a notarized form. I scanned the top sheet and froze. It was a completed divorce petition, dated 3 weeks before the fire. My heart pounded as I read the lines. Laurel Dane requesting legal separation from Silas Grenville. Reason listed, irreconcilable differences. She'd included her own statements, personal and sharp. In the margins, her handwriting in red ink curled around the edges like warnings. "He'll try to stop this. Keep it hidden." The last page stopped me cold. It wasn't official, just a note in the same ink. "I want the house. Let him keep his lies." Tears welled up before I could stop them. Not because I was sad, because I was furious. She had made a plan. She had taken a step. And someone had made sure that step was her last. Across the counter, Maribel stayed silent. She didn't have to say anything. She already knew. "How long did you know she was leaving him?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "She told me after your last visit," she replied. "She said you were the only one who had the guts to say it out loud. She didn't want to worry you, thought she'd handle it quietly." I swallowed hard. "She was going to wait until after your birthday," Maribel added. "Said she didn't want to ruin that day for you. Said once you were settled again, she'd file." My birthday had been the day after the fire. I didn't speak. I couldn't. "She even wrote a letter," Maribel continued. "A goodbye of sorts. She said she'd leave it out, in case things went wrong." That letter. The paper Silas had tossed in the footage. I'd seen that crumpled edge. I knew that handwriting. "He needed her gone before she could act," I said quietly. Maribel didn't respond. I gathered the documents and walked them into my bedroom, laying them out beside my laptop. Then I returned to the kitchen, poured 2 cups of tea, handed one to her. "She almost made it out," I said after a while. "She almost did it." "Yes," Maribel replied. "But someone made sure she didn't." The sun had dipped low by then, casting gold through the windows, turning the room a soft amber. I looked around and realized just how much my apartment felt like hers. Plants near the sink, books in uneven piles, candles not meant to be lit, just placed. After Maribel left, I stared at the folder again. It was worn, but it had made it, just like Mom had hoped. I sat down, took a deep breath, and opened a fresh page in my notebook. I didn't call Ophelie. I thought about it, sure. I thought about showing her the documents, the signatures, the notes, but I already knew how that would go. She probably wrote that in a moment of anger. We don't know if she really meant to file. This doesn't prove anything. They didn't want the truth. They wanted quiet. Instead, I began writing my own list. Not just of what Silas had said, but what I could prove he had done. Paper trails, insurance dates, timeline inconsistencies. My pen moved fast, my mind sharper than it had been in years. I didn't care if it took days, weeks. I would line everything up, neatly, clearly, undeniably. I opened the folder and slipped the divorce petition into my file labeled Truth. My fingers lingered on the corner before I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "You tried to leave, Mom. You almost made it. I won't let him bury that, too." I sat there for a long time after Maribel left, the folder still open in front of me, its contents spread across the table like puzzle pieces from a life someone had tried to burn. Outside, the morning fog was lifting slowly, revealing a pale sky above Eugene that never really promised sun, just a brighter shade of gray, the kind of sky that makes you feel like something's about to break open. I'd barely taken a sip of coffee when the knock came again. This time, softer. A rhythm I knew too well. Silas. I stood still in the middle of my kitchen, staring at the door, letting the silence stretch longer than was polite. Then I opened it. He stood there holding a brown paper bag and a coffee cup, all charm and ease. "Bagels and coffee," he said, lifting the bag like an offering. "Thought you might not feel up to cooking." He didn't wait for me to invite him in. He just stepped across the threshold like he still belonged in my life. I closed the door behind him, watching how casually he placed the bag on my counter, like he knew every corner of the kitchen. His gaze moved around the room, pausing just a second too long on the folder at the edge of the table. "The place looks good," he said. "Looks like you're feeling better." I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out a chair and sat down. He followed, placing the coffee in front of me. He launched into small talk, how the garden was a mess without Laurel's touch, how the neighborhood was asking about me, how everyone missed seeing your light. Every word calculated, just enough warmth to mask the control. I let him talk, my hands resting quietly in my lap, my expression unreadable. After a few minutes, I tilted my head slightly and asked, "Did Mom say anything to you the night before?" His voice faltered for just a fraction of a second. "What do you mean?" he said, reaching for the coffee. "I mean," I continued, keeping my tone calm, "did she mention anything important? Something she was planning to do?" He looked away, then back, the smile returning, but slower this time. "She was tired," he said. "Worried about you. But no, nothing specific." I nodded slowly, giving him space to hang himself with his own rope. "She said something to me," I replied, tone still even. "Something she wanted to do." He went quiet, just for a breath. Then he smiled again and changed the subject. 15 minutes later, he was gone. I didn't touch the bagels. Once the door clicked shut behind him, I exhaled. My hand went immediately to the side drawer of my desk. I pulled out the evidence bag that held Mom's old phone, recovered after the fire. I had kept it untouched until now. It powered on. Barely. I navigated through the old messages, voice memos, notes. Most were normal, shopping lists, half-recorded reminders. Then I found it. A voice memo saved as a draft. It hadn't been sent. Maybe she hadn't gotten the chance. Maybe she knew it would be found eventually. I hit play. Her voice filled the room, shaky but unmistakably hers. The kind of voice you don't forget, even if you try. Verity, she said, if something happens, don't trust him. He changed the documents. I sat there frozen. She sounded tired, like she'd already run out of fights. But beneath the fatigue was something sharper. A warning laced with disappointment, but not in herself, in him, and maybe, in me. I listened to it again, then a third time, until the edges of her voice started to fray in my ears, and my eyes burned from the sting of holding too much in. I transferred the audio file to my computer, backed it up twice, then dropped it into the truth folder. I added it to the growing archive, photos, documents, notes. Then I sent a copy of everything to a secure drive, and another to a burner email address I'd made that morning. Then I drafted an email to Detective Halden. Subject, urgent, new evidence. Body, I need to meet. I have voice confirmation. Timeline's tighter than we thought. She knew. I didn't send it yet, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted everything perfect. I took a break, walking slowly to the kitchen. I filled a glass with water and stood at the sink, looking out at the street below. The truth didn't set you free. That was a lie. What it did was make you brave enough to walk into the fire you'd been avoiding. Later that evening, when the world outside had gone still again and the apartment was bathed in soft lamplight, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh notebook. Not digital, not saved to a cloud, just pen on paper. I wanted to forgive him, I wrote, because forgiveness is easier than confronting the full weight of betrayal. I wanted to believe someone, anyone, would do the right thing without being cornered. But no one protected her, so now it's me. I didn't cry right away. I wrote until my fingers cramped, until the words ran out. Then, in the quiet, I let the tears fall. Not the wild kind, not dramatic. Just a slow, necessary letting go. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was remembering. Before bed, I played Mom's voice one last time, let it echo through the speakers, soft and resolute. Don't trust him. He changed the documents. I leaned close to the speaker, whispering back like she could still hear me across the space she'd left behind. Don't worry, Mom. I heard you, and I won't stay silent. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, but because I was focused. The voice memo from Mom played over and over in my mind, even after I turned the volume down and the screen went dark. Don't trust him. He changed the documents. It didn't matter how softly she said it. Those words cut sharper than anything Silas had ever thrown at me with a smile. By morning, I was already dressed when the knock came. This time, it wasn't a visitor. It was a delivery. An envelope stamped from the county courthouse. My name printed in clean block letters. I knew before I opened it that Silas had made his next move. I tore the seal, skimmed the legalese, and felt my stomach turn. He had filed for an injunction, citing emotional distress, claiming I was harassing him, making baseless accusations, disturbing the peace of a grieving household. Grieving household? He was trying to flip the script, paint me as the crazy one. The irony of it all made me laugh. Quietly. Bitterly. I held the paper in one hand and grabbed my phone with the other. Within minutes, texts were rolling in. Are you okay? I saw your name in the Eugene Ledger. I didn't know it got this bad. I'm here if you want to talk. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in months. A few from neighbors who had always smiled at Silas, waved at Laurel, and pretended not to notice the tension that lived between the porch steps. Then came the article. Local news had picked up the injunction. The headline, Grieving Husband Seeks Protection from Stepdaughter's Claims. In the photo, Silas wore that same soft-eyed expression he used at church, the same one he used at my mother's funeral. I didn't see my name until the second paragraph, but there it was, described as unstable, volatile, struggling with her mother's passing. And the worst part? Ophalie had given a statement. She's under a lot of stress. I think she needs time, not headlines. That was it. No denial, no defense, just a gentle push toward the door. Harlan. He didn't speak to the media. He just posted a cryptic message on social media. Blood doesn't make a family. Loyalty does. I didn't reply. Instead, I waited. At noon, Royce Halden knocked on my door, holding a manila folder. "I figured you'd want to see this in person," he said, stepping into the living room. He opened the folder and slid out 2 sheets of paper. "This wasn't supposed to be public record yet," he said, "but it was leaked." He pointed to the header. "A life insurance policy, Laurel Dane, updated 3 weeks before the fire. Beneficiary, Silas Grenville." "You think he found out she was leaving him?" I asked. "I think he didn't want to lose control," Royce answered. "And now that you're getting closer to the truth, he's trying to paint you as a threat." I nodded slowly, the fury settling deeper. "You can't file something like this and still pretend to be innocent," I muttered. "He's counting on you reacting emotionally," Royce warned. "Don't give him what he wants." I waited until Royce left before I pulled out Mom's second phone, the one Maribel had kept in her dresser drawer, wrapped in scarves, like it was sacred. I charged it, opened the voice messages. One file, unsent. Labeled For Verity. I hit play. Her voice was softer this time. Tired. She knew she was running out of time. "Don't trust the file he shows. The real ones are hidden at my mother's." I sat there, breath caught in my throat. She had hidden copies. Not at the house, at Maribel's. Within the hour, I called her. "Grandma," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mom said she left something with you. Something important. She called it the real ones." Maribel didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'll bring them over." By dusk, I had the files in hand, documents that showed the original insurance policy. Her name, her intent, her signature, next to dates that proved Silas changed everything. He wasn't just lying. He was erasing her. I sat with that thought for a long time, heart pounding. Then I opened my laptop, found the clip of her voice, trimmed it down, added subtitles. "Don't trust him." That's all I needed. I posted it to my social media with a simple caption, "There's more, and I'm not scared anymore." Within minutes, it was shared, dozens of comments, some asking questions, others thanking me. Many were shocked, some even apologetic. Then came the private messages, one from a former neighbor, another from a church friend of Laurel's, then an old co-worker of Silas's, all saying versions of the same thing. I always thought something was off. He never seemed that broken up. She looked scared the last time I saw her. I felt something shift. The wind wasn't just pushing against me anymore. It was moving with me. I opened my camera, stared into the lens, and hit record. This time, you're not erasing her. Or me. The morning air was sharp, colder than it had been all week. I pulled my coat tighter around me as I stepped out of the car, folder in hand. The courthouse loomed ahead, tall and impersonal, like it had seen too many families shatter under its roof. This time, it would see someone held accountable. People were already filing in, journalists, spectators, people who claimed to be friends of the family. I kept my eyes ahead. My heels echoed through the hall as I walked past the check-in, through the metal detector, into the chamber that would hold every lie Silas had ever told, and finally, its unraveling. When I entered the courtroom, whispers rippled through the gallery. Some people looked away, others stared too long. None of it mattered. I took my seat next to my attorney and placed the folder on the desk in front of me. Inside, Mom's voice recording, the notarized divorce petition, the insurance policy files, and the still frame of the crumpled letter. Silas sat across from me, a picture of grief and dignity. His gray suit was pressed, his wedding band still on. He offered no glance in my direction. Ophalie was beside him, her expression unreadable. Harlan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, not looking at anyone. He always had a way of pretending he wasn't part of things, even when he was deep in them. The judge entered. We stood, sat, and the session began. Silas's attorney rose first. His voice was smooth, practiced, the tone of a man who dealt in stories more than facts. "Your Honor, my client has endured unbearable loss," he began. He lost his wife of over 20 years and now faces cruel, baseless attacks from the very person he tried to protect, Mrs. Verity Dane, the stepdaughter, has been spreading unfounded allegations, attempting to destroy the reputation of a man still mourning. I clenched my jaw, staring straight ahead. Silas took the stand. He leaned forward, hands clasped tightly like a man ready to open his heart. "I loved Laurel," he said, voice shaking just enough. "She was everything to me. I've done nothing but try to preserve her memory." He turned slightly toward the judge. "I didn't expect Verity to spiral like this. Grief does strange things. She's confused, angry. But these accusations, they're dangerous, and they're hurting the people who are still trying to heal." There it was again, confused, unstable, fragile. The judge nodded solemnly, even leaned in a little. For a second, I felt the weight of the courtroom shift toward him, just like he wanted. Then my attorney stood, calm, steady. "Ms. Dane," she said, "please approach the stand." I rose, folder in hand, and crossed the room. I could feel Silas watching me now, not with sympathy, with calculation. My lawyer opened with the basics: my name, my relationship to Laurel, the timeline of events. Then she asked the one question that changed the entire atmosphere of the room. "Do you have any evidence to support your claims?" I opened the folder. "The day before the fire," I began, voice clear, "my mother recorded a message. She didn't send it, but it's real." I handed the flash drive to the bailiff. It was played over the speakers, her voice filling the room. "If anything happens," Laurel said, "don't let him twist it." A gasp, then silence. I continued, pulling out the divorce petition. She was planning to leave him. It's notarized, dated. She even wrote a note in the margin: "He'll try to stop this." I handed it to the judge. He took it slowly, brows furrowed. Then came the final piece. Royce Halden stepped forward. "I was the investigating officer on the fire," he stated. He pulled out another file. This footage was retrieved from a home security camera. It shows Mr. Grenville walking past the laundry room. That room was locked. Inside, Mrs. Dane was alive. The medical examiner confirmed she died of smoke inhalation hours after the fire started. The judge turned sharply to Silas. "Why didn't you call 911?" he asked. Silas didn't answer. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. My heart beat hard against my chest. Ophelie stood. Silently, she walked out of the room without looking back. Harlan looked down, jaw tight, but said nothing. Silas finally spoke, voice low. "She was leaving me. She made me nothing." I leaned forward, just enough for only him to hear. "And now you are." The judge ordered a recess. Silas's attorney didn't object. He looked defeated. The gallery buzzed with murmurs. I didn't care. Outside, the cold hit harder than it had that morning. But this time, it felt clean. I pulled my coat tighter and whispered, more to myself than anyone else. "You died locked in, Mom, but I set you free." The gravel crunched beneath my boots as I stepped off the path. The wind had softened since morning, carrying with it the scent of earth, pine, and something faintly floral. The cemetery stretched in quiet symmetry around me, headstones casting long, stoic shadows in the Sunday light. I held a single white rose, simple, clean, just like she would have wanted. Laurel Dane, mother, teacher, fighter, was buried beneath a stone that hadn't yet been updated with truth. It still read wife, no mention of the woman who had tried to break free, the woman who had left behind warnings for a daughter no one listened to. I crouched beside her grave and laid the rose down. "I didn't save you," I whispered, "but I made sure they saw you." The breeze picked up slightly, brushing hair from my face like a hand I used to know. I closed my eyes and let the silence hold me, not with weight, but with presence. Footsteps approached softly behind me. I didn't turn right away. "I thought you might be here," Ophelie said. Her voice didn't sound like it used to. Gone was the polished, practiced rhythm. What remained was raw, uncertain. I rose slowly, facing her. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her eyes were puffy, like she hadn't slept for days. Her coat hung off her shoulders, too large or maybe just heavy with everything we hadn't said. She reached into her pocket and held out a folded card. I recognized the floral border before I even touched it. "She wrote you this," she said quietly. I took it without speaking. Our hands touched for a moment, Fingertips only. She didn't stay. She stepped back and sat down on the bench beneath the old cedar tree behind us. I followed with my eyes but didn't ask her to go or stay. I opened the card. For my Verity, my fiercest truth. I'm proud of you always, even if I don't say it. Love, Mom. The ink was smudged slightly, like her hand might have trembled while writing it. Or maybe it had gotten wet. Either way, it didn't matter. It was the first time I had allowed myself to cry since the verdict. Not for justice, not for Silas. But for this moment, this piece of her that had waited quietly to be found. I folded the card gently and placed it in my coat pocket. Ophelie was still on the bench when I turned back. We didn't hug, we didn't cry together, but we shared something quieter. Some grief doesn't need to be named out loud. Later that afternoon, I drove across town, down the familiar street to the house I hadn't stepped inside since the fire. It had been cleaned, repainted, deodorized, but the smell of memory still clung in corners no fresh paint could reach. I unlocked the door and walked inside. The air was cold and still, not sad, just empty. I walked upstairs, passing the hallway where so many of our lives had twisted quietly out of shape. At the end of the hall was the guest room, Mom's favorite, where she used to sit with her tea and a book, claiming the light was better there in the morning. I had brought with me a framed photo, one of the few Silas hadn't managed to toss or ruin. It was Mom standing by her garden, sun on her face, hands in the dirt, smiling like the world hadn't yet turned on her. I placed it on the windowsill, angled toward the yard. No plaque, no announcement, just a picture, in a place she once loved. As I left the room, I didn't look back. That evening, back in my apartment, I pulled out my sketchbook for the first time in weeks. The pages still smelled faintly of pencil lead and ink. I opened to a fresh page and began to draw. The idea had been forming slowly, an outreach center for women like her, not a shelter exactly, a resource hub, somewhere women could go before things got dangerous, before they were erased. I began sketching a logo, a hand open with a seedling growing from the center. Beneath it, Veritas, Latin for truth, her name, my name. I didn't need to win every battle. I didn't need to carry the entire weight of what happened. I just needed to keep truth breathing. Later that night, I lit a small candle. I placed it next to the photo I kept on my bookshelf, Mom, holding me when I was barely 2, her eyes already tired, but still full of love. I sat back, the flame flickering against the glass. I didn't survive the fire to stay silent, I whispered. Pause. I lived to keep you remembered. Sometimes the most dangerous lies aren't the ones shouted. They're the ones whispered in rooms where no one else is listening. Verity's story reminds us that silence can be a weapon, and breaking it is the first act of survival. What would you do if someone you trusted tried to rewrite your truth? If this story moved you, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories just like this.